All right, let's get started here. Today we're going to do something unusual, and we're going to cover two chapters at once because they're kind of small chapters. Revelation 4 and 5. Basically, what we've covered so far is the Lord's letter to the churches, so we've looked at that. Today we're going to jump into 4 and 5, and this is what Revelation is famous for. It's what John observes in heaven. And so what we're going to see in 4 and 5 is the atmosphere. What is the setting? What did heaven look like? John is going to describe that for us. So we're not getting into the prophecy until next time. But right now, we're going to be talking about the environment. When Jesus called John up to heaven, this is the setting that John observed. Okay? So before I get into the meat, I'm going to do a little preamble here and set some things up. In the Bible, God certainly takes the form of a human. He takes the form of a human when he comes in the form of Christ. In the Old Testament, he appeared as the angel of the Lord, and we believe that those were all basically God taking human form has always been, it's been Jesus coming to earth. So he came to earth 2,000 years ago, but even before that as the angel of the Lord. So human form, God has been doing that. But in addition to taking human form, God has also been described in animal terms. Now, he's not described in all animal terms. He's never described as an ant or a butterfly or a hummingbird. There are only very, very few animals that are compared, that God is described as or embodies. Now, I'm going to say right now that what we're going to be talking about the four creatures that are in front of God's throne. This is discussed in the book of Ezekiel and in the book of Revelation. And this is kind of my theory. We don't know for sure why those four creatures. We have a bull, we have an eagle, we have a human, and we have a lion. Now, my theory is that these animals were picked specifically because in the Bible, God is likened to each of these four creatures. In the case of the human, he actually took human form. But these other creatures in the Bible, God has been likened to these animals. And so that's my take on it. If you find a better explanation, let me know. But this is, when I read this, the first thing I thought of is, this is why. Okay? So these animals are representative. These animals are, in a sense, an extension of God himself. Okay? So that's my theory. I don't know for sure if it's right. I'm just presenting it to you as my opinion. Okay? So let me give you some reasons why I think that way. So we're going to get into, oops, I got to start the show, don't I? Oh, 1 second. Okay. All right, so the physical appearance of heaven, as John saw it. So in Numbers 23:22, this is Balaam talking to Balak, I believe, about the Israelites and how God is blessing them. And it says in Numbers 23:23, God brings them out of Egypt. He is for them like the horns of the wild ox. And in Numbers 24, it says the same thing. God brings him out of Egypt. He is for him like the horns of a wild ox. Then he goes on. Just a minute here. He says, he will devour the nations who are his adversaries and will crush their bones in pieces and shatter them with his arrows. Okay. Now, first of all, ask yourself, what are the horns of a wild ox? Why is God likened to the horns of a wild ox? Anybody got any ideas on that? Well, when I used to work out in Yellowstone, one thing that they do when I first started working there was the rangers give you a lecture on how absolutely dangerous the wildlife is. They want to make sure that no employees are accidentally killed because the wildlife is very, very dangerous. I didn't have to speak too many. I didn't need to hear too many stories about bears to develop a paranoia of grizzly bears. But it wasn't just the grizzly bears. The second most dangerous animal in the park are the buffalo. And then they proceeded to tell us about all the people that tried to get a good picture of a buffalo that ended up with a horn through the chest. Okay? These things are incredibly powerful. They are solid muscle, and their horns are the dangerous end. Okay? You mess with a buffalo or a muskox or a water buffalo, anything in the large bovine family, and as a human, you have no chance. A wild ox, a wild bull, a wild muskox, a wild water buffalo will kill you 10 times out of 10 if there's a fight, okay? They're extremely dangerous, and their horns are the really dangerous parts. You are more likely to die from the horns than from the hooves, okay? And so God here is describing himself like the horns of a wild ox. It's like, you don't mess with him. If there's a competition between you and the horns of a wild ox, you know what the outcome is going to be, all right? That's just how it is. And so God describes himself like that. You go up against me, let me tell you, you're going to lose. Your odds of winning are 0.000, okay? Now in Numbers 24, he says something very interesting that liberal scholars often don't acknowledge. It says, he will devour the nations who are his adversaries and will crush their bones in pieces and shatter them with his arrows. Very often when liberal scholars talk about the Israelites and their mission to go through the Canaan lands and take over, they present it as though God is on the side of the Israelites and he is fighting for the Israelites and taking out the Israelites' enemies. This verse here is directly contradictory to that. It says specifically that he will devour the nations who are his adversaries. How does a nation become an adversary of God? God made these nations. He made the people in these nations. How did they become his adversaries? Any ideas?
Because they're going against the Jews.
Okay, but so did why didn't he just give them Egypt? They were right there. Why didn't he have the Israelites just conquer Egypt? He could have. And the Egyptians were afraid of this. That's why they killed all the firstborn males. Because of that. Because there were so many of them, they worried that in a confrontation, the Israelites might win. So why didn't he just give them Egypt? They were hindering them. Well, let me jump in here. Okay. The Canaanites had a religion that was particularly loathsome to God. God puts up with a lot. He put up with the idolatry of the Egyptians. He put up with the idolatry of the Greeks and all these other people. The Canaanites, he put his foot down and said, no, enough of this crap. No more. I'm going to wipe you people out entirely. You guys disgust me more than anybody, and I'm going to utterly replace you with the Israelites. What did they do that was so bad? It had to do with their religion. The Canaanite religion, the chief
sacrifice of human beings.
Exactly, yeah. They've systemized it, and not only did they do sacrifice of human beings on a level that was unprecedented. Okay, other nations did it. Where Abraham came, the land of Ur, they did the same thing. You look at Ur, you dig it up, and every home had in part of the wall a dead baby, where they would take a child and sacrifice a child for the home in the construction. So they did it too. But what they did in Canaan lands was on another level. Okay, with the legend of Molech, where God blesses you extra if you throw your child into a fire alive, okay, for favor. That caught on and became systematic in the Canaanite pantheon. And so, in addition, their chief deity, Elohim, they turned him into a disgusting, decrepit, ineffectual sex maniac god. They turned El, who by the way was represented by the bull, that was the representative of El. Instead of having him be a respectable chief deity, a loving chief deity, a chief deity that was responsible, they turned him into something disgusting. If you look at the Canaanite pantheon stories, I'm not going to go into all of it, but they really turned him into something immoral, grossly immoral. And this religion, but basically was about child sacrifice. It glorified sex to an incredible level. It glorified violence, sex and violence. You take a look at how the gods behaved. It was about sex and violence, and they worshiped it. So they had the name of El, okay, and they turned it, they twisted it into something wicked. That is, in my opinion, in my belief, and my strong belief, that was demonic. I believe that they were twisted by demonic influence. And so the Canaanites were heavily influenced by demons. I mean, how do you take pleasure in sacrificing a human child, even to ask for something like that, and not have it bother your conscience, to do innocence like that? And then temple prostitution. Okay, so these weren't the Israelites' enemies. God was disgusted and angered by the Canaanites, and he used his people to destroy them to a great degree. Okay, so anyway, so the first animal, the ox. All right, the next one, the eagle. In Exodus, what's that? Does somebody have a comment? Okay. All right, the eagle, Exodus 19:4. You yourselves have seen what I did to the Egyptians, and how I bore you on eagle wings and brought you to myself. Deuteronomy 32:7-12. Remember the days of old. Consider the years of many generations. Ask your father, and he will show you. Your elders, and they will tell you. When the Most High divided their inheritance to the nations, when he separated the sons of Adam, he set boundaries of the peoples according to the number of the children of Israel. For the Lord's portion is his people. Jacob is the place of his inheritance. He found them in a desert and in the wasteland, a howling wilderness. He encircled him. He instructed him. He kept him as the apple of his eye. As an eagle stirs up its nest, hovers over its young, spreading out its wings, taking them up, carrying them on its wings. So the Lord alone led him, and there was no foreign god with him. He made him ride in the heights of the earth, that he might eat the produce of the fields. He made him draw honey from the rock and oil from the flinty rock. So here, God, in all these, look at this language. This is the language of a protective eagle hovering over its loved ones, taking care of them, making sure that they are protected and that their needs are met, like a mother eagle protecting its young. And this is how God is describing himself. Okay, I protected you. I lifted you up. I protected you and brought you over dangers that without my help you would have run into that. But I hovered over you. I was with you the whole time, flying above, looking down on you, caring for you like an eagle. So here's the second animal that God is likened to. Okay, now the lion. That one is probably the easiest one. We have in Revelation 5:5. Jesus is called the Lion of the tribe of Judah. In Hosea 5:14, God describes himself like a lion who was attacking them, okay, because this is, Israel was led off into captivity. And so here it says, for I will be like a lion to Ephraim and like a young lion to the house of Judah. Even I will tear them and go away. I will take them away and no one shall rescue. So here God is likened to a lion, like, I'm coming after you. You guys are, going to get the discipline end of myself, and it's going to be like a lion. And so, so here we have God described in lion terms, okay? So those are four creatures that God is described as in Scripture. There aren't very many. If you look at animals and Yahweh, you don't find too many cases like this. And there are most of the animals are not, God never describes himself as. But here are four animals in Scripture where God is described himself as. Now, remember, the book of Revelation is the only book that kind of requires knowledge of all of the previous 65 books of the Bible. Okay, and so if you have that, as I'm saying, that's why these animals make sense if you are aware that God has described himself in these terms in the past. Any comments so far on this stuff?
What about a lamb?
A lamb, very good. Thank you. What do you know? Hey, boy, did you see my slides? How did you do that? You knew that, right? Pretty good. There it is. Yes, that was the other one, the lamb. Now, the lamb is not included in the four creatures because the lamb is in heaven standing right there, and that's Jesus, okay? And so we have God, have the four creatures, and then the fifth creature is the lamb, which is specifically Jesus himself, okay? So good call. Was that Eric that said that? Good call. All right.
The most tender moment for me, though, Bill, was the lady from under the TV, who I never found out her name.
Okay, what am I talking about? This is a friend of mine, Ruth, who had a near-death experience. It's on YouTube if you want to see the whole thing. And she had a brain aneurysm that was the size of a golf ball. Okay, really, really serious. And during the surgery, they literally had to take the top of her head off. They removed the entire skull, and her brain was exposed. Well, she popped out of her body while they were operating on her brain, and she went to heaven. And in heaven, she saw her grandmother and 5 of her dead children. She has a disease called Ehlers-Danlos. She's still suffering to this day with that disease, by the way. And she has headaches every single day. But she saw 5 of her miscarried children with her grandmother. And so then her grandmother pointed her attention to a stream. Now, my point is, in heaven, as John describes heaven, in front of the throne, there is a body of crystal clear water. So in Ruth's near-death experience, she is going to describe looking into that very pool. So let me go back to that.
The most tender moment for me, though, Bill, was the lady from under the TV, who I never found out her name. She kind of directed my attention. She's like, look at that stream over there, and look at this. And so I started kind of looking in the other direction, leaving my grandma and my children, and kind of feeling like it would have been wrong for me to go up and hug them. Like I was just supposed to see them is kind of what I felt. So I turned my attention, and there was this just beautiful clear water. And you looked in it, and it's like you could see, it felt like, I don't know, 70 miles deep. I mean, and you could see everything in the water. It was so clear, and it was beautiful. And there was so much bright light. It was just incredible, the brightness of the light. And it kind of just naturally started moving towards that light. And it was in that moment that I really felt that I met Christ. Because at one point, I literally fell to my knees and I said, I have so much to say that I'm sorry for. And it was like an arm, I don't know, put around me and lifting me up and said, I knit you together in your mother's womb. And I know that your body is going through a lot right now, but I've got you, and I will carry you, and I will sustain you, even when your hair is gray.
And the point that I wanted to bring out about her, the whole thing is on YouTube if you want to see the whole testimony. But the whole point is that, this crystal clear body of water in front of the throne, and she's describing it. She's not the first person who has a near-death experience who's talked about that. Quite a number of people have described that. So I just wanted to bring that up. Now, another factor about heaven that people talk about in near-death experience is very common, is when you're in heaven, whatever you think appears. Okay, and this I could show you so many clips where people say that happens. You think of flowers and flowers appear. You think of chocolate, it appears. Whatever you think, boom, there it is. The point is this. In Ezekiel and Revelation, we have a lot of similarities, but there are some very big differences. And some people go, well, wait a minute. Why is it different? Why is what Ezekiel says different from what Revelation says? Well, reality in heaven is different than reality here. The people are real. The spirits are real. The angels are real. The setting changes because thought changes physical reality in heaven. Okay, so I'm not going to go through this next slide because I'm just setting that up. Okay, so first of all, what am I talking about? How does Ezekiel? What does the description in Ezekiel? How is it similar and dissimilar to what John sees in Revelation? Let's take a look at Ezekiel. Okay, when I was 30 years of age, I was living with the exiled in the Kabar River. On the 5th day of the 4th month, the sky opened up and I saw visions of God. I looked. I saw an immense dust storm coming from the north, an immense cloud with lightning flashing from it, a huge ball of fire glowing like bronze. Within the fire, what looked like four creatures vibrant with life. Each had the form of a human being, but also each had four faces and four wings. Their legs were sturdy and straight as columns, but their feet were hooved like those of a calf and sparkled from the fire like burnished bronze. On all four sides under their wings, they had human hands. All four had both faces and wings, with the wings touching one another. They turned neither one way nor the other. They went straight forward. The faces looked like this. In front, a human face. On the right side, the face of a lion. On the left, the face of an ox. And on the back, the face of an eagle. So much for the faces. The wings were spread out, with the tips of one pair touching the creature on either side, and the other pair of wings covered its body. Each creature went straight ahead. Wherever the spirit went, they went. They didn't turn as they went. The four creatures looked like a blazing fire, or like fiery torches. Tongues of fire shot back and forth between the creatures, and out of the fire, bolts of lightning. The creatures flashed back and forth like strikes of lightning. As I watched the four creatures, I saw something that looked like a wheel on the ground beside each of the four-faced creatures. This is what the wheels looked like. They were identical wheels, sparkling like diamonds in the sun. It looked like they were wheels within wheels, like a gyroscope. They went in any one of the four directions they faced, but straight, not veering off. The rims were immense, circled with eyes. Okay. So anyways, you get the idea. So that's the picture. So you got these really bizarre creatures in heaven here. And these four creatures, they have each of these creatures has four faces, and they're covered with eyes, and these two sets of wings that are covered with eyes, okay? So anyway, so that's the picture in Ezekiel. All right, so I just want to give you that. And so we're going to contrast that with what we see in Revelation. So let's start in Revelation chapter 4, verse 1. Then I looked, and a door opened in heaven. The trumpet voice, the first voice in my vision, called out, "Ascend and enter. I'll show you what happens next." All right, now, what is he about to be seen? He's about to see a movie of the end of the world. So next means after this age, after the age of humanity, I'm going to show you what happens in the very last chapter. That's what he means by next. So before the movie starts, though, he's going to arrive at the theater, which is heaven, and he's going to describe what he sees in heaven. I was caught up at once in deep worship, and a throne set in heaven, with one seated on the throne, suffused in gem hues of amber, and aflame with a nimbus of emerald. What's a nimbus? Anybody know? Kind of like a glowy greeny thing. Okay, so like shining greenish lights, kind of like what you see here. This is kind of, I know, I think if this was painted by a 7th grader, but you kind of get the idea. You see these wild colors, but he's directly surrounded by greenish hues. So a luminous cloud or a halo surrounding a supernatural being or a saint. That's a nimbus. All right. Now, in addition to this God figure seated on a throne with these lights and lightnings going on, 24 elders, 24 thrones circle the throne, with 24 elders seated, white-robed, gold-crowned. So we got these 24 people, 24 humans. Well, they're called elders. We don't know who they are. These are probably the greatest of all the people of God throughout history. There's 24 of them. And we got probably 12 on each side, okay? Lightning flashed and thunder crashed, pulsed from the throne. 7 fire-blazing torches fronted the throne. These are the 7-fold spirits of God. Before the throne, it was like a clear crystal sea. So we have the throne. In front of the throne on each side, we have 12 elders on each side. We have the crazy lights going on. And then in front of the throne, we have this body of very crystal clear water, such as what Ruth was describing. Ruth said it was like 70 miles deep, but absolutely clear. So this is a drawing with what they're describing. We got the 7 lighted lamps, which are the spirits of God, probably also representing the 7 churches there, the 24 elders. And then we have, now we're going to talk about the creatures, okay? Prowling around the throne were four animals, all eyes. Eyes to look ahead, eyes to look behind. So that's consistent with what Ezekiel saw. The first animal, like a lion. The second, like an ox. The third, with a human face. The fourth, like an eagle in flight. All four animals were winged, each with 6 wings. They were all eyes, seeing around and within. And they chanted night and day, never taking a break. Holy, holy, holy is God our Master, sovereign, strong, the was, the is, the coming. All right. Now here you say, wait a minute. In Ezekiel, you didn't see like one person with a human face, one with a lion, one with an ox. But no, in Ezekiel, each animal had all 4 faces. So what's going on here? Why the difference? Well, remember, heaven is not quite static the way this is. And so basically, we have the same 4 creatures. That's what's important. But what John is seeing and what Ezekiel saw are slightly different in that. But keep in mind, this is heaven. That's kind of thing can happen there. Okay. All right. So the same 4 creatures. So here we have a rendition of the Revelation version of what heaven looked like. So kind of like an acid trip. Very much like an acid trip. Okay. Pretty wild. All right. Here's another rendition with God having an afro. Okay. Now, why would God be holding a holy Bible? That's kind of like, okay, that right there, just like, okay, whoever painted this is not very, seriously, why would God, he is the Word of God. Why would he need to hold a Bible? I don't think God has a Bible on his desk. I really don't. All right. Every time the animals gave glory and honor and thanks to the one seated on the throne, the age after age living one, the 24 elders, would fall prostrate before the one seated on the throne. They worshiped the age after age living one. They threw their crowns at the foot of the throne, chanting, "Worthy, O Master, yes, our God, take the glory, honor, the power. You created it all. It was created because you wanted it." Now, why did the elders throw their crowns at the foot of the throne? Why did they do that? And that is, no, think about where did the crowns come from? They were given by God. The crowns represent the deeds done in the name of Christ on earth. You know, that verse, that song, or that poem rather, only one life twill soon be past, only what's done for Christ will last. Well, that manifests in heaven as crowns. Now, I think they're symbolic. I don't imagine that they're actual crowns, but we're seeing symbolism here. But the idea is that the elders are humble. They simply recognize it's like if we didn't have your Holy Spirit, if we didn't have your grace, the good things that we did never would have happened. So ultimately, you know, we don't deserve this. I mean, everything we have that was good came from you. You know, we just signed up for it. Okay, that's it. And while you're giving us crowns, you're giving us credit, but actually, it's the credit goes to you. You know, and so he's kind of describing the attitude, the heart attitude of these elders. Okay, they were legitimately humble. Okay, all right. So here we have the elders, you know, putting their crowns out there. All right. So that's it for Revelation 4. Okay, so that's why we're doing 2 today, because Revelation 4 is just really not that big. And fortunately, Revelation 5 adds no. Now, Revelation 4 and 5 are all about setting. Before we get into prophecy stuff, 4 and 5 is all about what did heaven look like. Okay, so let's move on. I saw a scroll in the right hand of the one seated on the throne. Now, who is this seated on the throne? Anybody specifically? Who do you think that is, folks?
Christ.
Who?
God the Father.
Yeah, God the Father, because the God the Son is standing nearby. So yes, the one on the throne is God the Father. When Jesus was on earth, and when asked, you know, when will these things come to pass, Jesus said, right now, nobody knows except the Father. I don't even know. While he was on earth. When he went back to heaven, not only did he know, he's the one that will start this things in the first place. Okay? But basically, God the Father has had the scroll all along. God the Father knows what's coming. It's in there. Okay, but it's God the Son that will initiate the end of days. And I'm gonna say why. I'm gonna tell you why I say that in a minute here. Okay, but God the Father had the scroll all along. So from the very beginning, he knew how it was going to end. It's in the scrolls. Okay, so saw one seated on a throne. It was written on both sides, fastened with 7 seals. I also saw a powerful angel calling out in a loud voice like thunder, "Is there anyone who can open the scroll, who can break its seals?" All right. There was no one in heaven, no one on earth, and no one from the underworld able to break open the scroll and read it. Okay. So in order to open this scroll about what's going to happen at the end of time, because that's why John is there. He's told, I'm going to show you what happens next. So he's probably thinking, okay, what's going to happen next? I want to see this, right? And it's in this book. It's in this series of scrolls. But there's a snafu. Nobody can open it. So he's like, I came here, I'm waiting for the movie to start, and there's not going to be a movie. There's nothing. You can't even open the thing. So I was like, this is embarrassing. You're telling me that in all of creation, nobody is able to read this thing? So I'm here for nothing? Then I began to weep greatly because no one was found worthy to open the book or look in it. All right? So he started crying about it. He's like, man, got my ticket for the show, and now the show's not going to start. Okay? Now, I think there are other things that come into play. I don't think that's the only reason he was weeping. In heaven, there's a lot of downloading going on, because very often people will describe that they know all this stuff in heaven. They don't know how they know it, but suddenly all this new information is in your head, and you understand things like there's no way on earth you could hold all that information in your head. So, I suspect that John was aware that it's not just about reading the scrolls. It's about who's able to start this, because in order to move on to the next chapter in human history, you have to go through the end of this chapter first. So who's able to start this chapter? And so by opening these scrolls, it's also not just about opening them and reading it, who is able to put it into play. Because when Jesus opens these scrolls for real, it's going to be the end. The opening of the scrolls means he will actually initiate the end of days. All right? So Jesus is the one that's going to do that. But for John's purposes, he's seeing a vision of this in heaven. Okay? All right. And one of the elders said to me, "Stop weeping. Behold, the Lion that is from the tribe of Judah, the root of David, has overcome so as to open the book and its 7 seals." So don't worry about it. You're going to see the show. The Lion of Judah is able to open these scrolls here. So he's looking around for a lion, and what does he see? So I looked, and there, surrounded by the throne, animals and elders, was a lamb, slaughtered but standing tall. So Jesus does not appear as a lion. He does not appear as a human. He appears as a lamb, and apparently there is blood coming out of his neck, because it says slaughtered but standing tall. So he's standing up, alive, but he's bearing the wounds of a lamb that has been slaughtered on the altar. And I saw a lamb standing in the middle of the throne, the 4 living creatures and the elders. He looked like he had been slaughtered. Now, in your mind, you probably got the picture of this lamb that looks like a normal lamb. He goes on, he's not looking like a normal lamb, okay? There are some unique things about this lamb. All right, he had 7 horns and 7 eyes. Right. Why does Jesus appear as an alien lamb? Any ideas? I mean, seriously, this is something you find on other planets. So why is Jesus an alien? Okay. The number 7, what's the symbolism there?
Perfection.
Exactly. 7 is a number for perfection. Okay. Now the 7 eyes is simply, I believe the 7 eyes is describing his divinity. That's why the 4 creatures have eyes all around. He sees everything. He knows everything. Okay. So Jesus is God. It's kind of supports his divinity. He sees all, just like the Father. Now the 7 horns in the Old Testament represent authority, kingship. Okay, David was the horn of Israel. That's used as he's the leader, the president, the king is represented. The more kingdoms you have, the more horns you have. Okay, the Antichrist. When we get to discussion on the Antichrist, we're gonna talk about his horns. Horns represent authority over nations. So the perfect number 7, Jesus is legitimately the true ruler of all the kingdoms of earth. He is the true king. Think about his parables when he talked about the ruler who left, and he left his kingdom in charge of these people who were supposed to be, monitoring his vineyards and stuff like that. And when he came back, or rather he sent his son, and they killed him because thinking this is the heir, we're going to get this stuff, but they weren't the true rulers. The one who left them in charge is the true ruler. Jesus is the one that made everything and everybody. He is the true king of all the nations of earth. And so here you have the lamb that was slain is actually the true king, the true ruler of all the nations of earth. He is the father of all mankind. By him, there is nothing created that was not created through and by Jesus. All right. He is the rightful king. And the horns basically represent that. Jesus is the rightful ruler of all the nations of earth. Okay. Therefore, he has a right to put an end to the nations of man. Any comments on that? Questions, criticisms? Okay. All right. He came to the one seated on the throne and took the scroll from his right hand. The moment he took the scroll, the 4 animals and 24 elders fell down and worshiped the Lamb. Each had a harp and a bowl, a gold bowl filled with incense, the prayers of God's holy people. Okay? So it's 2 things come out from this. Okay, the prayers that we pray, sometimes it seems like we're praying to the ceiling, but every sincere prayer to God actually physically becomes something that's in eternity. It never goes away. It has influence. Okay, and so we got this picture here. It's like, wow, it made it to heaven. It's physically in heaven. Now, with regard to, I don't, if somebody, weighs, if somebody has a weight problem on earth, I seriously doubt when you get into heaven, you're going to have a weight problem. Okay. Just like being old. If you die at 90, do you get to be do you look like a 90-year-old forever? I don't think so. When people have near-death experiences, like when Ruth saw her 91-year-old grandmother, she looked to be about in her early 30s. I think that's pretty consistent finding. So you're not going to find somebody who looks like they're 57 or 60 in heaven. And if they have a weight problem, whether they're overweight, underweight, or whatever, I think you'll be the best weight for you in heaven. So, anyway, I'm just saying, those elders, I don't think they're going to look like Santa Claus here. Okay, I'm just saying. All right. When he took the scroll, the 4 living beings and 24 elders fell down before the Lamb. Each had a harp, and they had gold bowls filled with incense, which are the prayers of God's people. It's kind of a beautiful imagery there. And they sang a new song with these words: "You are worthy to take the scroll and break its seals and open it, for you were killed, and your blood has ransomed people for God from every tribe and language and people and nation." Wow. Very, very powerful words. Okay? You were killed, and your blood has ransomed people from every tribe, every language, every people, all nations. Now, let me ask you this. Throughout history, has the gospel gone to every tribe, language, and people on earth? What do you think? Has it?
I don't think so.
No, you're right. You're right. It hasn't. It hasn't. And so this is, I think the Bible contains all truth. What I mean by that is everything in the Bible is true. Now, does all truth reside in the Bible? No. Do we know everything about heaven from the Bible? No, we have a peek into heaven. We don't know everything. We don't know everything about earth in the Bible. We have some things, but not everything. There's a whole lot of truth out there that we are not aware of. The Bible tells us what we need to know. And some stuff we can extrapolate from the Bible. And some stuff we just don't know. This is a really interesting tell, okay? Because I believe that based on scriptures like this, I strongly believe that people that have not had an opportunity to receive Christ on earth, that have not had a good presentation of the gospel, when they cross over, I believe that many people will be given that opportunity. And that's the only thing that explains why. Well, it's not the only thing. That's one theory. This is one theory. How is it that all these people make it? Well, they have that other chance because, it's not terribly fair to condemn somebody to hell if you've never, ever had the gospel explained to you. And so it does explain why all these people are going to be in heaven from all these different tribes, because the blood of Christ, even though anybody that gets to heaven, it's through the blood of Christ. But sometimes I think that they're going to need an explanation of Christ from the other side. Okay. Now, the other thing is, all these people that die before the age of accountability, including aborted babies, where do you think they go? Okay. All the children that were sacrificed, all the children throughout history that have died of diseases before their second birthday, where do you think they go? Okay. And so there's going to be a whole lot of people there, but they don't necessarily need the blood of Christ. If you're an infant, or if you're an embryo, you might not need that so much. But he's talking about the blood of Christ there. So this goes back to the idea that, for the sins of people, of all people, the blood of Christ applies to all people who in their souls are sincere and willing to repent and to receive the gift that God is offering them. So lots and lots of people are going to be in heaven. And I think this is going to be one of the reasons why Jesus says in hell, there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Gnashing of teeth is all about regret. Wow, it was that easy. Look at all of my ancestors who are going to be in heaven. Look at all the people throughout all of history that are going to be living it up in heaven, completely fulfilled, and I missed out. I chose against Christ for what? And now I'm looking at a hopeless eternity in this horrible place. Okay? And I think the fact that there are so many in heaven is going to be one of the reasons why there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Broad is the road that leads to destruction, and they pick the easy road, and they're going to regret that forever and ever and ever. Because there is a lot of people are going to be in hell, and they're going to see all their aborted kids in heaven. Okay? And and it's like, wow, it's like, and in near-death experiences where people go to hell, one of the things you'll notice is that when they're there, they realize that they should be there. So there's not this, oh, I shouldn't be here, there's been a mistake. You are completely aware of every sin you've ever done. You're completely aware of all the ramifications of the sins that you've done. And you are there wallowing in your shame and guilt forever and ever. Okay? All right. And I believe, is this the last one? Let me see here. Oh, no, okay. You then you made them a kingdom, priests for our God, priest kings to rule over the earth. I looked again. I heard a company of angels around the throne, the animals and the elders. 10,000 times 10,000 their number. 1,000 after 1,000 after 1,000. So what are we talking about? The number of angels. So John is in heaven, and he's describing the number of angels who are going to be singing this song. And they sing this song. The slain lamb is worthy. Take the power, the wealth, the wisdom, the strength. Take the honor, the glory, the blessing. Then I heard every creature in heaven and earth, in the underworld, join in. All voices in all places singing to the one on the throne, to the Lamb, the blessing, the honor, the glory, the strength, for age after age after age. The four animals called out, oh yes. The elders fell to their knees and worshiped. So how many angels is John counting here? He gives us a number, 10,000 times 10,000, which comes out to about 100 million. Okay? So if there are 100 angels in heaven, and a third of them became demons, a third of them became, if we take standard biblical theology, where a third of the angels followed Lucifer, how many total angels might there have been? Comes out to about 150 million. Okay, so I don't know if we're supposed to take that number concretely, or if he's just giving us a big fat number saying, well, there's a whole lot more than I can count. So there's a lot of angels. Bottom line, there's a whole lot of angels. Okay, all right, not just a couple there. All right, so that's it for Revelation 4 and 5. Okay,